Mr. James Denton's greatest love in life was books, old ones most of all. His collection grew bigger and bigger every year, but he lived in his aunt's house, and she was not very happy about this. Mr. Denton was in London one day to buy furniture for the new house which he and his aunt were building, and he was on his way to a shop to choose the curtains. His way took him, quite by chance, past one of the best bookshops in London, and he could not stop himself going in, just for a quick look, as he told himself. He was just walking round the shop, looking at all the different books, when he noticed a small collection of books on the part of England that he came from, Warwickshire. He spent the next half an hour looking through these and finally decided to buy one that really interested him, called The Diary of Mr. Pointer, I-710. He paid for the book, and then, looking at his watch, he realized that he had very little time before his train back to Warwickshire left, and he had to rush to the station. He just caught the train. That night, his aunt questioned him about his trip to London and was very interested to hear about the furniture which was going to arrive soon. Her nephew described everything in detail, but still she was not satisfied. "And what about the curtains, James?" she asked. "Did you go to—" Suddenly, James remembered. Oh dear," he said. "Dial's the one thing I missed. I am so sorry. You see, I was on my way there when, quite by chance, I passed Robin's." "Not Robin's the bookshop, I hope," cried his aunt. "Don't tell me you've bought more horrible old books, James." "Well, only one," he said, feeling a bit guilty. "And it's a very interesting one, a diary of someone who used to live not far from here." But he could see that his aunt was not really listening. "You can't go to London again before next Thursday," she was saying. "And really, James, until we decide on the curtains, there's nothing we can do." Luckily, she decided to go to bed soon after that, and James was left alone with his new book, which he read until the early hours of the morning. He found this diary, with its stories of everyday life at Duxtown, very interesting. The next day was Sunday. After church, James and his aunt sat in the living room together. "Is this the old book that made you forget my curtains?" asked his aunt, picking it up. "Well, it doesn't look very good. The Diary of Mr. Pointer. Huh?" But she opened the book and looked at a few pages. Suddenly, much to his surprise, she began to show some interest. "Look at this, James," she said. "Isn't it lovely?" It was a small piece of paper, pinned to one of the pages of the diary. On it was a beautiful drawing, made up of curving lines which somehow caught the eye. "Well, why don't we get it copied for the curtains if you like it so much?" he suggested, hoping that she would forgive him for his bad memory of the day before in London. His aunt agreed, and the very next day James took the piece of paper to a company in the nearest town who agreed to copy it and make it into curtains. About a month later, James was called in to inspect the work and was extremely pleased with the result. "Was it a difficult job?" he asked the manager. "Not too difficult, sir, but to tell you the truth, the artist who did the work was very unhappy about it. He said there was something bad in the drawing, sir." James was thoughtful, but still he chose the colors for the curtains and then returned home. A few weeks later, the curtains were ready, and a man came to hang them in several rooms of the new house, one of which was James's bedroom. That night he found that he could not stop looking at them, and although it was a still night, he was almost sure that the curtains were moving and that someone was watching him from behind them. He told himself that this was impossible and not to be so stupid. He explained to himself that the effect was caused by the curving lines on the curtains, which looked just like long, curling black hair. The next day, a friend of James's came to stay, and after dinner they sat up late, talking and laughing. At last they decided to go to bed, and James showed his friend to the guest room, which was just along from his own. James, though, did not want to go to bed immediately and sat in the chair by the fire in his room, reading. He fell asleep for a few minutes, and when he woke, he realized that something was in the room with him. Putting out his hand, he felt something covered in hair and thought it was his dog, who always followed him everywhere. "How did you get in here? I thought I left you downstairs," he said, looking down. To his horror, he found it was not his little dog, but something almost human. He jumped and screamed, and as he did, The face of the thing came up towards him. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, only hair. He screamed again and rushed to the door, but was so frightened that he could not get it open. He felt the thing touch his back and start to tear at his shirt. At last, the door flew open and he rushed to his friend's room, terrified and breathing hard. The next morning, early. James went away to the seaside for a few days to try to forget about his horrible experience. He took with him the diary of Mr. Pointer. He wanted to read it again carefully to find out anything he could about the pattern pinned onto the page. When he turned to that part of the book, he found that there were several pieces of paper stuck one on top of the other. He carefully pulled off the first two and found this story, written by Mr. Pointer in 1707. Old Mr. Casbury of Accrington told me this day of young Sir Everard Charlett, at that time a student of University College. The young man drank too much and broke the law many times, but because he was from an important family, the university never did anything about it. He used to wear his hair very long and curling down his neck, and he wore unusual, colorful clothes. His behavior made his father very unhappy. One day they found young Sir Everard dead in his room, with all his hair pulled out. No one could explain why or how he died, but the strangest tiling was that, the day after he died, the body disappeared completely, leaving only a pile of long, curling black hair on the floor of his room. His father kept some of this hair and had drawings made of it, part of which I have pinned to this page. This is the strange story behind the curtains. Before he returned home, James Denton ordered his servants to take them all down and burn them. In the West Country. I arrived on the Friday night and my friend was keen to show me the village on the Saturday morning. I'll take you around and show you everything. Then I want you to meet a friend of mine, John Hill. He's about 70 years old and knows all the history of the village. Oh, and make sure you ask him about Martin's Lake. Why? Is it a good place for fishing? I asked. He laughed. Well, no, there's no water in it now, but let old John tell you the story. I'm sure you'll enjoy it, said my friend. The next day, after a tour of the village, we went to old John Hill's house for tea. We persuaded the old man to tell us the story of the lake. It was the Christmas of 1683, and a young gentleman, George Martin, returned from Cambridge University to the village. He was a popular young man and used to ride his horse long distances to visit his friends in the neighborhood. One night it was snowing hard, so instead of riding all the way to his house outside the village, he decided to stay at the small hotel here. As it was Christmas, there was music and dancing in the hotel, and all the young men and women were dancing together, except one. Her name was Anne Clark, and she worked at the hotel. She was an innocent young girl, not very intelligent. In fact, people used to laugh at her behind her back, and, of course, none of the young men wanted to dance with her, but George Martin, the young gentleman, took pity on her and asked her to dance. The band were playing an old song called "Lady, Will You Walk? Will You Talk With Me?" Everyone saw how happy the poor girl was to have someone to dance with. Her face lit up with a smile. After that night, the young gentleman came to the hotel every week. When he arrived on his horse, he used to sing that song, and Anne Clark used to rush out to meet him as soon as she heard it. The two often went for walks together by the lake, and some people say they saw them kiss. This went on for a few months until George Martin's parents found a wife for him. She was a beautiful, rich young woman, and from a very good family. Everyone said how lucky George Martin was, but then it all went wrong. The young woman heard about Anne Clark and was angry that a gentleman like him went about with an ordinary country girl. She refused to marry him. He, of course, regretted ever meeting Anne and was very angry to lose such a beautiful young wife. People say that the next time he saw Anne, they argued and he hit her. A week later, they were seen together again. He said a few words to her and then rode off. They say she looked very happy all that day, but not long after, she disappeared completely. No one could find her anywhere. Some weeks later, George Martin came into the hotel again, went into the bar and asked for a drink. A young woman called Sarah, a friend of Anne Clark's, served him. "Are you looking for Anne, sir?" she asked, "because no one has seen her for weeks." He answered angrily that no, he was not looking for her, and he sat alone, drinking his beer. Sarah started to wash some glasses and, without thinking, began to sing the song. "Lady, will you walk? Will you talk with me?" The young gentleman's face turned pale, and he told her to stop singing immediately. She stopped immediately, of course, but then suddenly she heard Anne's voice outside the door continuing the song. "It's Anne! She's back!" Sarah cried and ran towards the door. "Stop!" shouted George Martin, but it was too late. The door opened and a strong, cold wind blew out all the lamps, leaving the room completely dark. Sarah heard someone walk across the floor, and the door of the big cupboard opened and shut. When she lit the lamps again, she saw something that looked like the bottom of a woman's dress caught under the cupboard door. Sarah was frightened and asked one of the men in the bar to open the cupboard. As the man pulled open the cupboard door, George Martin screamed and ran out of the bar into the street. Out of the cupboard came a small human shape, dressed in clothes that looked wet. No one saw its face, but everyone felt a freezing wind as it passed through the bar and into the darkness outside. The next person to see George Martin was a young boy who was coming home from fishing at the lake. He said he saw the young gentleman running towards the water, looking very frightened. He broke a branch off a tree and started to feel around in the water with it. After some minutes, the branch hit something and a strange sound like a scream came from deep in the lake. George Martin covered his cars with his hands and started to scream also. As he did, the boy saw a human shape come out of the water and chase the young gentleman away into the trees. The boy ran and called the police. They found the body of Anne Clark at the bottom of the lake, and under a tree was George Martin's knife, covered in blood. He was guilty of murder, of course, and they hanged him 5 weeks later. After that, everyone knew it as Martin's Lake, although it's dry now. And do you know, said old John Hill, that even now no one will sing that song in this village. People say it's unlucky.